Hello, chess family. It's me, National Master Jesse James. It's time to look at another very fun endgame that is instructive to help you become a better chess player. Alright guys, in this one we're going to be going over a rook and pawn endgame, and you might be saying, well, this looks like a little bit more like a queen and rook game right here. But here we're going to see with forced moves here, I was able to transpose this into a rook and pawn endgame, and well, give them a good weakness. Now this game is not 100% accurate by me, but hopefully you can learn from my mistakes and inaccuracies and make these adjustments in your game. Alright, here we go. In this position right here, my opponent just played rook takes on e4 as I've just made a series of trades. And here I saw that I can create an isolated pawn for them. What did I start off with? Here I went ahead and played queen over to b7, putting them into a pin. But one of the bigger ideas is to try and put pressure and take on d4 in the future. So here already they do have to be very careful. And here they did play the best move. Here they went ahead and played queen to f3. Now they could have tried pawn f3 here, but this would pretty much almost be like the same kind of story. Because of the pin against the rook to the queen, I can simply just double up my rooks and just get a good game. So rook to d7, rook to d5, and then just double up. And at some point, I'll be able to take on d4 and then create that weakness. But like I said, they did play the best move here. Queen over to f3. And here I saw my opportunity. Now I can create that, that pawn weakness, the isolated pawn. C takes on d4. Rook takes on d4. I mean, they're more than welcome to play it either way. I mean, it's either they're going to play c takes d4 or they're going to play rook takes. And this one, they went ahead and chose rook takes. And this is a very good idea just because the king will take on f3 here after I trade queens. Of course, I will. And the reason is to give the isolated pawn. But now the king's a little bit closer to the center. Now, black is slightly better, but the game is not over yet. A lot of people think when you go to isolated pawn, it's just a clear win. It still takes a lot of technique to win in these games, especially against strong opponents. As you can see here, I'm playing against a 2500, so not a weakie by any means. And here, let's create the isolated pawn. Rook takes on d4, c takes on d4, and here I played the second best move in the position. And here's the question I'll ask to you. Where do you move your rook in this position? Shall we go to rook c8 to get the rook to the second rank, or play rook to d8 and attack the passed pawn right away? Which one is best here? And this one I played too fast and played the second best move. I was able to turn this into a win, but that was only due to very high accuracy or accurate play after this. This was probably my biggest mistake of the game here. Alright, hopefully you push pause and try to figure it out. What was the best move here? The best move here is actually rook to c8. If you ever are thinking about what the best move is, especially when it comes to rook and pawn endgames, just remember the saying, keep your rooks active. At this point, when the rook comes to c2, because it can't be stopped, the rook is going to become active by attacking two pawns over here. Now, I played the rook over to d8, which is a good move. It does put pressure on the pawn, but, well, the king's already close enough to defend. And even the rook can defend over here. In fact, if it was white to move, you might even think about just playing rook over to c1 here. Remember, keep the activity here. So, well, in the game, white went ahead and played king e3, which is a good idea. And here I went ahead and played king f8. Here we start the idea of trying to get the king over to the center and put pressure on the d4 pawn. Again, I missed my opportunity. Of course, I should have played rook over to c8. But playing too fast here, I missed a simple idea. Let's keep going. Rook over to c1. Of course, my opponent takes the open file. And here, like I said, they want to get the rook to the 7th rank. Let's not allow this, as the rook would stop my king from getting to the center, but also be putting pressure on the pawns. So let's go ahead and play it. King over to e7. Now, wait a second. Doesn't rook c7 win? In this endgame, if we trade rooks, this is actually beneficial to me because of the isolated pawn. So here, if they had chosen to play rook c7 check, well, you can simply just go ahead and play rook to d7. Of course, I'm very happy in this endgame. My opponent made the best decision and played the rook back over to c3. And here, let's just keep making progress. Let's keep putting our pieces on good squares. Here, we play king over to d6. Again, like I said, the king is going to try to go to d5 at some point and keep putting pressure on the pawn. Now here, I know a lot of people may have a hard time in these kind of positions. I'm saying, what should I do? And sometimes a lot of people will force the game to happen. You should really, at the higher levels, you can definitely try to force it. But a lot of times what you can do is just build up your position and not make any weaknesses. That's a key idea. A lot of times if you're a strong opponent and you're playing against a weaker player in an even position, you can let them make their own weaknesses or let them hang themselves, right? Just give them some rope and they will just start making weaknesses. Maybe start pushing pawns randomly and then weaknesses get made. And then all you do as a strong player is just attack them. Well, that will happen in some games, but not all of the games. So here, I went ahead and played my opponent played rook c8, a very good move. They're keeping the rook active and not making any kind of pawn moves. And here I went ahead and played king to d5. The idea, put pressure on the pawn. So here I'm kind of waiting around and seeing what they're up to. Pawn to f4 gets played. Not a bad move. Maybe in the future I might have thought about e5. To be honest, that's not a real move I'd like to play, just because I would be trading off a good pawn for a bad pawn. Remember, isolated pawn is one of the 3 different types of pawn weaknesses. Isolated, backwards, and double pawns. All right, here we go. I went ahead and played pawn to f6. Again, slowly gaining some space here. My rook is now defending the pawn. Although this does make this pawn a little bit weak, that's going to be okay. Pawn to b3 gets played. I'm definitely very happy to see this. Again, this is the moves I'm definitely waiting for. This is a weakening move because now, let's say I'm able to trade off the rooks. My king has access to b4, a3. So now I have penetration for this position, or getting over to my opponent's position. All right. I play king to d6. Again, it's a waiting move. Not the best, but I'm not making any pawn moves which make weaknesses. My opponent played king over to d3. And now I went ahead and made that move, rook over to c7. Here I realized the king and pawn endgame is going to be great for me. And here, well, to my surprise, my opponent went ahead and took. Oh my gosh, I was so happy here. You know, this is why you can play your opponent, and at different levels of the game, you know, opening, middle game, end game, we all have our different strengths, right? And even though this is a 2500 rated opponent, trading the rooks off is definitely not the best. Here would be just, you know, doing some rook checks and just really annoying me with the rook moves. By trading off, it becomes into a definite position of someone is either going to be winning or it's going to be a draw. Maybe they were thinking this was going to be a draw, but I definitely believe because I isolate pawn, I'm definitely a little bit better here. Of course, I was happy to make that trade. King over to e4, and we simply go king back to d6 here. My opponent went ahead and played g4. Definitely not the best move here. Here, they might have tried to play pawn to f5. The idea? Well, here they're trying to get access for the king to come in. Let's say after pawn takes, king takes. Now you see that the king can get in here, but also they create a passed pawn. And it's not so simple just to attack the extra pawn over here because, well, after this pawn's taken, you can see that these guys are ready to roll. And it's going to be quite a while before I get my king over here to win these pawns. So as far as the race goes, this is already +5, a very easy calculation for many strong players. Fortunately for me, my opponent did not play this move because, I mean, even if I try something like, I don't know, e5, it still doesn't feel very good. After pawn takes, the king right here is on a great square, and I think at some point I'm going to have to move my king over, and zugzwang will happen, and yeah, this pawn will be lost. Oof. Lucky, like I said, lucky enough for me, my opponent did not see this move and instead played g4 to help prepare this move. How lucky can some guys be? So here I realized the idea, and of course I want to stop it. So what do you play? Here, let's go ahead and push back our opponent. Let's gain some space. What do you play? Pawn to g6. We're going to stop this idea and try to allow us to create a passed pawn if needed. Notice here that f5 does not work anymore. If f5 gets pushed, simple chess. We're going to go ahead and play e takes on e5, check. The pawn has to take back, and then you simply go g5. And this is going to be great for us as we're creating an extra, well, we made a candidate pass pawn, but this guy over here is going to get pushed forward. And now this king is just not very good. You can't push forward over here. So the king will have to go over here, but I'll take this pawn, I'll take this pawn, I'll take all the pawns. This is simply a winning endgame at this point. So f5 here is now just a bad position for them. So g6, stopping my opponent's idea. And here they went ahead and played pawn b4, another move I'm happy to see. At this point, I can pretty much put their pawns in zugzwang very, very fast. In fact, that's going to happen in a little bit here in our king and pawn endgame. All right, black to move. Let's push back our opponent. Let's gain some space. What do you play here? All right, if you haven't already, go ahead and give us that like and subscribe. Remember, liking this is going to share this with more chess players. All right, it was black to move. What do you play here? Let's kick them back. We want to gain access to this d5 square so we can actually put pressure on the pawn and also have access to a penetration square or getting over to their side. So here we get to play the very nice pawn to f5 check, an offer they can't refuse. They're going to have to trade off a pawn here, which is going to help me out. Pawn takes, and here, well, which way do you take back? Which way is best? Should we go g takes on f5 or e takes on f5? Think about the pawn structure. Think about creating a passed pawn. Which one is better? All right, hopefully you pushed pause and thought about it for a little bit, and hopefully you made the right choice here. Here you actually take back with the e-pawn. A lot of people might be saying, wait a second, didn't we just give him a pass pawn? We did give him a pass pawn here, but this pass pawn is easily blockaded by our king. And don't forget, we're going to be able to create our own pass pawn over here. So that's going to make this king run over this way. We'll be able to take over here. We'll take over there. We win again in these endgames. At this part, I'm just kicking back my opponent. King to e3 got played. Definitely the best move in this position. And the reason why is because of the king position, or, oh gosh, king mirroring is one way of putting. I can't think of the other word right now, but basically it's it's called opposition. Sorry. And right with this king move, a lot of people might think about playing king over to d3, but this is bad because then you can jump on opposition at some point. For those of you who don't know this, I'll do you can take a look at the side. I will have a very basic idea about what king opposition is for the endgame. All right, back to the game. King to e3 got played, and here I went ahead and played king to d5. Of course, my king is on a great square here. Not only am I putting pressure on the pawn, but now I have the penetration squares here, e4 or c4 over here. The game is almost at negative 0.1 over here. All right, here we go. King over to d3, jumping on my opposition. Again, white is doing a great job on trying to hold this to a draw. Here I went ahead and played b5. This move makes a lot of sense to me because I'm trying to take away their pawn moves. There was a hidden resource that my opponent actually resigns in the endgame where there was actually a draw. So hopefully you know your opposition and maybe you can find the move. But b5 was played to stop that. Apparently I was supposed to play a stronger move over here of pawn to g5 right away. And that makes sense because after g5, after f takes, g takes, now I've got my passed pawn. And again, I'm going to be able to most likely win this endgame. Anyways, back to this game. I played pawn b5, taking away the square. My opponent does not miss the opportunity. h4, again stopping my g5 idea. Ugh, not too happy for me. Well, let's go and keep going forward. Here I played king over to c6. This is one of those moves where you're testing your opponent about the king opposition. They've done a good job so far, but here I'm going to see if I can get them off balance. King over to e2, a very good move, staying on my opposition. King over to d6, king over d2. See the mirroring move? Just remember the rule. If it's an odd number of spaces in between, then you're on the opposition. At this point, it's 1, 2, 3. So they are good. And so they keep jumping on it. You might be asking, hey, they weren't on it earlier right here, but here they're on what's called like the diagonal opposition, or basically they can jump on my opposition anytime that I go to it. For king to d5, king over to d3. For king to d2, king over to d6. If king over to d1, if king over to d7, then king to d1 gets played. So they're doing a very good job at this. So I got to do this just right. King to d6, king to d2, king to e6, king to c2, king to d5, king to d3. And here I went ahead and calculated the pawn moves, and I was saying, oh, 1, 2, 1, 2. Here we go. a6, a3, h5, and now I've taken away all their pawn moves or the wasted moves. At this point, they must jump off the opposition. But if they were paying attention to their endgame books, they'd see that there's actually a draw move here. Here they went ahead and played king over to e3. Now I'm able to penetrate with king to c4. King to d2 loses the game right away. If it's white to move, what do you play here to make this a draw? Remember we were talking about opposition, odds, or even the odds as far as the spaces in between? Here, if he had simply played pawn to d5, it would become a draw. Because the whole idea is to keep my king from penetrating the position, right? I mean, I have to take this pawn. If I don't, the pawn will run. So king takes, and then what do you play here? King over to d3, and at this point, my king cannot penetrate. He can't penetrate, but I cannot. I cannot, and he cannot at this point. And even though I'm up an extra pawn, this pawn is just terribly killing me because it's a backwards pawn. There's nothing I can do at this point. All you can do is shuffle back and forth. But my opponent missed the move. I'm not going to lie. I missed d5 myself. He played one of the worst moves you could play. He played king over to d2, and this is perfect because now not only do I take the pawn, but I jumped on his opposition. So if he goes this way, I go that way. If he goes queenside, I go kingside. If he goes kingside, I go queenside. Either way, my king's going to be able to run through, and once one pawn falls, they all will fall over here. And the endgame was pretty easy at this point. king e2, king over to e4, king d2, king takes, king c2, king g4, and a4. Of course, my pawn's so much more faster than theirs. I just want to go over this real quick to show you a nice little tidbit real quick. Passed pawns must be pushed, takes, takes. King over to d3, king g3, king to d4, f3, king to c5, f2, king takes b5, queen check, king over to, what is it? c6, queen f4. Here I was planning on taking the pawns. And really at this point, the idea for me was to make it simple. Now you can do very good technique and win the pawn by force here, or you can keep it simple, especially if you're playing a fast game and you don't want to do other calculations. Just go ahead and sacrifice the queen for the pawn. I already have 2 extra pawns over here, so I should be pretty easily. King over to c7, and now we can simply just take. And well, I made 2 queens over here. I was able to win the game quite easily. All right, guys, hope you enjoyed this. Remember, this was a very nice demonstration about rook and pawn endgames, going all the way into a winning king and pawn endgames. Remember the idea about opposition, basically mirroring your opponent's king, and this will help you get those draws in lost-looking positions. All right, guys, we'll see you in the next video.